Going to question 21 now. This is our standard grammar prompt. When you see this, you know it's a grammar question. And let's start reading. During the English neoclassical period, many writers imitated the poetry and satires of these people. They were not the first in England to adopt the literary modes of classical antiquity, however. Some of the most prominent figures of the earlier Renaissance period were also influenced by these guys. So, a lot going on, but this is a classic situation that comes up a lot on SAT questions. Let's take it apart. First of all, let's talk about when we should use a semicolon. Here are our rules for semicolon, colon, and long dash. But right now, let's just talk about the semicolon. It's for two independent clauses. John went to the mall. He bought shoes. So coming back over this question, they were not the first in England to adopt the literary modes of classical antiquity, however. So that is an independent clause, and the word however is kind of thrown in there as a modifier. Again, like we talk about on a lot of questions, a modifier is just like a little extra bit of information kind of tacked on at some point in a sentence. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But let's talk about how the next part is also an independent clause. Some of the most prominent figures of the earlier Renaissance period were also influenced by Greek and Roman literature. So that also could have been a sentence. So the semicolon is a good thing here. Now, by the way, when you have two independent clauses with just a comma between, because this is a modifier, we're kind of pretending it's not there. And if it were sort of temporarily deleted, then you would have an independent clause on this side of the sentence and followed by an independent clause on that side of the sentence. When you have two independent clauses basically separated with a comma, like you do in answer choice B, that's what's called a comma splice. Two independent clauses should be separated by a semicolon or a comma fanboys. Separating them just with a comma is called a comma splice. Separating them just with a fanboys word like and is called a fuse sentence, and separating them with nothing at all is called a run-on. So that is an important mistake that you'll be hearing a lot of on different grammar questions. But coming back over here, we have our two independent clauses. Like I mentioned, two independent clauses can be joined with semicolons or comma fanboys. So comma and is a popular thing. But this situation with the however type of word, either going before or after the semicolon, that's a really important situation. If it's coming after the semicolon, it's basically saying that the orange part of the sentence is a contrast to the pink part of the sentence, and that would ruin the logic of what's being said. They weren't the first. If we follow that with, however, other people were also influenced, that's saying that those two things are contrasting each other, and they're not. It's more of like a colon situation. They weren't the first. And then when we say some of the most prominent figures were influenced, we're explaining how they weren't the first. So it's really important to say that the pink and orange parts of the sentence agree with one another. Now, putting the however on the left side of the semicolon has an entirely different function. It's telling us that the pink part of the sentence is contrasting the purple previous sentence. So, during this period, writers imitated the poetry of ancient Greece and Rome. However, they were not the first to adopt those literary modes. So there is a contrast there. Many people did it, but they weren't the first ones to do it. And then in orange, it explains in an earlier period, other people did it as well. So that, however, being placed before and not after the semicolon, that's a very, very important SAT moment that you should pay extra attention to. And it comes up very frequently.